in northern Iraq. And now the New York Times is publishing a disturbing look inside the culture of rape and sexual slavery within ISIS, specifically against Yazidi women and girls who are bought, sold, assaulted. And their attackers defend these actions as their right. Joining us now, Rukmini Callimachi. She is the foreign correspondent for the New York Times who wrote this article. Michael Weiss is here in studio with us. He's a CNN contributor and co-author of ISIS Inside the Army of Terror. Rukmini, this is a tough article that you've had to write. You sat down and interviewed 21 women and girls who have escaped from ISIS. In fact, I want to play a little sound from one of them that you had a chance to speak to.
ونزه ما وكاز تشد بيجم از بيجم جارنا هكا ساعات سيف شيبي كهرتبي بهناوان المدة إلا كم ده جارا روجي دينانة خوشون جامنا هي داموانا دبي مبا أفهي هردو بيتري المبام معي.
It's too much to bear. As a woman, I think both of us can just imagine the terror and horror this young woman and others have experienced. But what makes this particularly disturbing, Rukmini, is the fact these men are said to have prayed before and after, somehow saying that the Quran gives them the right to perpetrate these atrocities.
Yes, I think that was the most disturbing aspect of these interviews. One 12-year-old girl that I interviewed explained to me how she tried to reason, with this man and said to him, "You're hurting me. You're hurting me. What you're doing is not right." And he kept saying to her, "No, the Quran gives me permission to do this to you, and the fact that I'm having sex with you is something that pleases God."
As young as 12, as young as 11. And I understand from your article that this is an organized sex trade industry, if you will. I mean, they inventory these women and girls?
Highly organized, and it's only now that I think that this is coming to light. On August 3rd of last year was when ISIS invaded Sinjar Mountain, which is the traditional home of the Yazidi people. And the women I interviewed, as well as others, said that within the first hour, women and men were immediately separated from each other. Men were taken away and killed. Women were then loaded onto a fleet of waiting buses. So they came with empty buses because they knew that they were going to take these women away. They were then taken to a series of, if you will, holding pens, large warehouses where they were held. And the women describe how systematically, in different locations that were dozens of miles apart, the same procedure ensued, which is that the fighters came, wrote down their names, and then asked them a set of very intimate questions, including when did you have your last period? Because one of the Sharia rulings is that you cannot have sex with a female slave who happens to be pregnant.
One of the rulings, and they specifically target the Yazidis. Why is that?
The systematic trade in these women seems to be exclusively of the Yazidis. And initially, what scholars told me is there are some limited protections in the Quran and in the Islamic tradition for so-called people of the book, meaning Jews and Christians. They're allowed to pay a tax called a jizya, which then allows them to live as essentially second-class citizens under Muslim rule. However, what's confusing is that the Islamic State has just released on Twitter a very lengthy manual that the New York Times was able to get a copy of and translate. It came out last month. And in that manual, they make very clear that, in fact, Christians are fair game too.
Oh, goodness.
And so we don't know. We know that they are holding hundreds of Christian women. The Assyrian community, the Assyrian Christian community has confirmed this. And we don't know why they haven't been subjected to the same treatment. Of course, we're very happy that is the case. But so far, it seems to be the Yazidis who are bearing the brunt of this brutal practice.
Rukmini, stand by for a second. Michael Weiss is here with us in studio, and we know we've seen this kind of behavior used as a recruitment tool, promising wives to young men that they're trying to entice to join the fight. How effective a recruitment tool is this, and is it one of the key factors they're using?
I think it's one among many. We, for our book, interviewed a guy called Abdulaziz, who was a Syrian national, lived in Bahrain. Wasn't even a pious Muslim. He went back to Syria in 2011, joined up with a rebel brigade, then moved over to an Islamist brigade, went back to Bahrain, became radicalized by ISIS, and then made the emigration to the so-called caliphate. He actually fought at the Battle of Mount Sinjar and told us quite boldly that he took a sex slave. And the way that ISIS does it is they divvy them up. fighters who have actually partaken in the battle get one of the girls, but then there's a communal pot, so to speak, of women that get shared and passed around. So the systematic or the methodological structure to this is very, it's as horrifying as it is interesting. A lot of totalitarian movements throughout history, they're good record keepers, look at what Stalin or the Nazis did.
And you talk about it. You talk about it as a movement too. Because this is important. They try to claim that this is Islam, but it's bastardization. But you say it dates back to early 7th century?
Yeah. Well, there are surah in the Quran that speak of sexual slavery. The phrase that keeps recurring in some of these verses is those whom you possess by your right hand, which is tends to be a reference to women taken in sexual bondage and all the dispensations you're allowed with them. However, Islam is a faith that has been interpreted and reinterpreted and modernized to some extent over the last several centuries. Clerics today, by and large, say, because modernity has outlawed slavery, nobody can bring it back, even the most supposedly fundamentalist or pious Muslims. And also there are other things. Rukmini was talking about a woman who is pregnant. According to the strict rules of Sharia going back to the 7th century, if she was your sex slave and she got pregnant, you had to liberate her. She became a wife. So there are all kinds of things that ISIS is doing. As fundamentalist as they may be, they're also very improvisational in their behavior.
We can certainly see. Rukmini, we want to tell you our thanks, our appreciation. As horrifying as this is, it's really important to shine a light on what is happening there. Thank you for your tremendous article. Michael Weiss, thank you so much for your analysis.